Breaking news, inflation is back. Hold on to your hats, folks, because inflation is back with a vengeance. After a period of relative calm, the economic landscape is shifting once again. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, has made a surprising leap, catching everyone off guard. After months of staying relatively tame, the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, decided to throw us a curveball. This sudden spike has left many wondering what could be causing such a dramatic change. It jumped up in October 2024 for the first time since March. This unexpected rise has economists and analysts scrambling to understand the underlying factors. This unexpected rise has got everyone from economists to everyday folks like you and me scratching their heads. What could be driving this sudden increase in prices? Is it a temporary anomaly, or are we on the brink of a more sustained period of inflation? Is this a temporary blip, or a sign of things to come? The uncertainty is palpable and everyone is looking for answers. Some experts believe it could be due to supply chain disruptions, while others point to increased consumer demand as a potential factor. Well, to understand what's going on, we need to break down exactly what CPI is and why it matters so much. The Consumer Price Index measures the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. It's a crucial indicator of inflation and helps us understand the purchasing power of our money. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the wild world of inflation. Inflation can be a roller coaster ride, with prices rising and falling in response to various economic factors. Understanding these dynamics is key to making informed financial decisions. For the average consumer, inflation means that the cost of everyday items like groceries, gas, and housing can go up, stretching budgets and making it harder to make ends meet. It's a phenomenon that affects everyone, from the wealthiest individuals to those living paycheck to paycheck. When inflation rises, it can erode the purchasing power of your money, meaning you get less bang for your buck. This can lead to a decrease in the standard of living if wages don't keep up with rising prices. It's a delicate balance that policymakers and economists strive to manage. So, what can we do to protect ourselves from the impacts of inflation? Staying informed is the first step. Keep an eye on economic news and trends, and consider how changes in inflation might affect your personal finances. Diversifying your investments and seeking financial advice can also help mitigate the risks. It's also important to review your budget regularly and make adjustments as needed. Look for ways to cut costs and save money, whether it's by finding cheaper alternatives for everyday items or reducing discretionary spending. Every little bit helps when it comes to managing the impact of inflation. In the long run, building a financial cushion through savings and investments can provide a buffer against the uncertainties of inflation. By planning ahead and making smart financial choices, you can better navigate the ups and downs of the economic landscape. While inflation can be a challenging and sometimes unpredictable force, understanding its causes and effects can empower you to take control of your financial future. Stay informed, stay prepared, and remember that knowledge is your best defense against the ever-changing tides of the economy. So, hold on to your hats, folks, and get ready for the ride. Inflation is back, but with the right knowledge and preparation, you can weather the storm and come out stronger on the other side. This has been your breaking news update on inflation. Stay tuned for more updates and insights on how to navigate these turbulent economic times. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay informed and stay prepared. Think of the CPI as a giant shopping cart filled with all the things we buy regularly: groceries, gas, rent, you name it. This shopping cart is a metaphor for the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which is a measure that examines the weighted average of prices of a basket of consumer goods and services such as transportation, food, and medical care. The CPI is calculated by taking price changes for each item in the predetermined basket of goods and averaging them. Prices are collected periodically to get an accurate picture of the cost of living. This basket of goods represents the average spending habits of U.S. regular folks. It includes everything from the food we eat, the gas we put in our cars, the rent or mortgage we pay, to the medical care we receive. Essentially, it covers all the essentials and some non-essentials that we spend our money on. Each month, the government checks the prices of all these items to see if they've gone up or down. This is done by surveying thousands of retail stores, service establishments, rental units, and doctors' offices all over the country. The data collected is then used to calculate the CPI. The CPI tracks these price changes over time, giving us a sort of report card on how much our cost of living is increasing. This report card is crucial because it helps us understand the rate of inflation, which is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services is rising, and subsequently, how purchasing power is falling. When prices go up, it means our hard-earned rupees don't stretch as far as they used to. This can be particularly challenging for those on fixed incomes, such as retirees, who may find it harder to make ends meet as the cost of living increases. In other words, our purchasing power takes a hit. This means that the same amount of money buys fewer goods and services than it did before. For example, if the CPI indicates that inflation is at 3%, then a basket of goods that cost 100 rupees last year would cost 103 rupees this year. And that's what we call inflation. Inflation can be caused by various factors, including increased demand for goods and services, higher production costs, and supply chain disruptions. It's a complex phenomenon that affects everyone, from consumers to businesses to policymakers. Understanding the CPI and how it measures inflation can help us make better financial decisions and plan for the future. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. The CPI report for October 2024 showed an overall increase of 0.4%. That might not seem like a huge jump, but remember, it's the first time we've seen a rise since March. If we dig a little deeper, we see that the core CPI, which excludes volatile items like food and energy, also went up by 0.3%. This tells us that the price increases are pretty widespread and not just due to temporary fluctuations in things like gas prices. So what's fueling this inflationary fire? Well, the usual suspects are at it again. Housing costs, which include rent and something called owner's equivalent rent, are a major culprit. These costs have been steadily climbing for a while now, putting a squeeze on household budgets. Then there's gasoline, which has been on a roller coaster ride of its own. Prices at the pump have been fluctuating wildly, adding to the overall uncertainty. And let's not forget about food prices, which have also been creeping up, making it more expensive to stock our pantries. Section 5. The Fed's Balancing Act, Interest Rates and Inflation. In this section, we delve into the intricate relationship between interest rates and inflation, and how central banks like the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, navigate these turbulent waters. Now the big question on everyone's mind is, how will this CPI report affect the Reserve Bank of India's stance on interest rates? The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is a critical measure of inflation, reflecting the average change over time in the prices paid by consumers for goods and services. When the CPI report shows a significant increase, it signals rising inflation, which can have widespread implications for the economy. The RBI has a tough job. They're like the economy's parents, trying to keep things stable and predictable. They must ensure that inflation remains within a target range while also fostering economic growth. This dual mandate requires a careful balancing act, as actions to control inflation can sometimes hinder economic expansion. One of their main tools for doing this is by adjusting interest rates. Interest rates are the cost of borrowing money, and they influence consumer spending, business investment, and overall economic activity. By raising or lowering interest rates, the RBI can either cool down an overheating economy or stimulate a sluggish one. When inflation gets too high, they might raise interest rates to slow down borrowing and spending, which can help cool things down. Higher interest rates make loans more expensive, reducing the amount of money circulating in the economy. This can help bring down inflation by decreasing demand for goods and services. However, raising rates too quickly can also stifle economic growth. Higher borrowing costs can discourage businesses from investing in new projects and consumers from making large purchases such as homes and cars. This can lead to a slowdown in economic activity, potentially causing unemployment to rise and overall economic growth to falter. It's a delicate balancing act. The RBI must carefully monitor economic indicators and adjust their policies accordingly. They use a variety of tools and data to make informed decisions, including inflation forecasts, employment figures, and global economic trends. Their goal is to maintain a stable economic environment where inflation is controlled and growth is sustainable. In conclusion, the relationship between interest rates and inflation is complex and requires careful management by central banks. The RBI's role is crucial in ensuring that the economy remains on a steady path, balancing the need to control inflation with the need to support economic growth. This balancing act is essential for maintaining the overall health and stability of the economy. Section 6. Wall Street reacts mixed signals and bond yields. As you can imagine, the stock market doesn't like surprises very much, and this CPI report definitely threw a wrench in the works. Stock prices reacted with a mix of confusion and concern, with some going up and others going down. Meanwhile, bond yields, which are kind of like the interest rates on bonds, jumped up. This suggests that investors are worried about inflation sticking around and are demanding higher returns to compensate for the risk. Section 7. Experts weigh in, a temporary blip or cause for concern. So, what do the experts make of all this? Well, as usual, they have a range of opinions. Some economists believe this recent CPI spike is just a temporary blip caused by supply chain disruptions and pent-up demand. Others are more cautious, warning that inflation could be more persistent than we think. They argue that the RBI needs to keep a close eye on the situation and be prepared to act if necessary. Section 8. Looking ahead. Will inflation cool down? Predicting the future is a fool's errand, especially when it comes to the economy. But most analysts seem to think that inflation will likely stabilize in the coming months. Of course, there are a lot of factors that could affect this, like global events, government policies, and even the weather. The RBI will continue to monitor the situation closely, and any future decisions on interest rates will depend on how the economic data unfolds. Section 9, the takeaway, what it means for your wallet. Okay, so what does all this mean for you and me? Well, the bottom line is that rising inflation can make it harder to make ends meet. Our rupees don't go as far, and we might have to make some tough choices about our spending. The best thing we can do is stay informed, track our expenses, and look for ways to save money where we can. It's also a good idea to talk to a financial advisor if you're feeling overwhelmed or need help navigating these uncertain times.